He has a obligation to uphold the Constitution of the United States and enforce our laws. He has failed miserably in his obligation to both. Our border is as porous as it has ever been. Since Joe Biden took office, nearly 10 million migrants have crossed our southern border, many of them illegally. Secretary Mayorkas has testified before Congress on numerous occasions and lied to Congress about his actions and the actions of the Homeland Security Administration when it comes to securing our border. Chairman Green is working through the process, and I'm not going to get ahead of him as to what the charges will be. But I can tell you this. When I visited the border last week with Speaker Johnson, it is far worse than even I thought. This is a catastrophe. You have in Eagle Pass a facility that can handle 1,000 migrants at a clip. They were processing 6,000 just a few days before we arrived. These migrants, 90% of them are released into the United States within 36 hours. Right. And, you know, when they're doing the background checks, if they can't verify somebody's name, they just assume that that is the person. And that is deeply disturbing when you're talking about national security threats and the obligation of the Secretary of Homeland Security to protect the homeland. He has failed in that obligation.
To that point, I think the question is, as he's also serving as one of the administration's point people on the ongoing bipartisan Senate negotiations to address a very urgent issue both parties seem to agree on at this point in time. Yeah. How does moving forward with impeachment help actual policy process and what has always been a very complex issue?
Well, look, this has been a crisis that has been ongoing for 3 years, in large part because of the policy decisions of the Biden administration. House Republicans passed H.R. 2 back in May of this year. Sure. Senate Democrats did nothing about it for months until House Republicans and the Speaker said, we're not moving forward on Ukraine funding unless you act on the border. And so now the Senate is negotiating. But they have to recognize the negotiation will ultimately be between the House and the Senate. So, yes, the Senate is negotiating right now. We'll see what they come forward with. House Republicans had put our plan forward. But ultimately, there's going to have to be a serious, good faith negotiation. This can't be mealy-mouthed. It has to be serious reforms to secure our border.
To that point, Speaker Johnson, in an interview with our colleague Jake Tapper last week, seemed to lay out that H.R. 2, your bill that you guys passed, you're very accurate on that, is the red line. That's the line in the sand. That doesn't get 60 votes in the U.S. Senate. If you want a real negotiation, an intensive negotiation, H.R. 2 can't be the be-all, end-all from the Republican position.
As we saw with the Fiscal Responsibility Act, you have to pass something to be able to negotiate, right? So we passed Limit, Save, Grow. Speaker McCarthy was able to go negotiate with the president on the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Senate Democrats haven't passed anything yet. Right. So let's see what they actually can
You're saying
pass.
the Speaker's just putting out a negotiating position.
Let's see what they can pass, and then we're going to have to negotiate. Look, we're in a divided government, right? So we're not all going to get everything we want. But we have to be serious about reforming the asylum process. Remain in Mexico has to be the policy. So there's parts of H.R. 2 that absolutely have to be part of any final deal.